Hello, everybody. Um, I haven't done a video in a while, and I did film one, and then I decided not to for some reason. But I thought there's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and a lot of people aren't really paying attention to the news, maybe. So I thought I'm not going to read the whole articles and stuff, but I will go through just like what's happening in the news, like today, over the last week, and stuff. And yeah, because I enjoyed doing the democracy video, and then this is just the real news. So I will be doing this based off of stuff on BBC News, and then a Twitter account. I know Twitter, but there's some Twitter accounts that I find are actually useful in kind of talking about politics, and that is Politics UK, and then there is also Politics US and Politics Global, which I will also be kind of stepping in and out of. But so on the front, so I'm doing it based on the front page of BBC News. I'll just kind of have a look through. Some of these are quite hard going. Some of these are like proper, like normal things, I suppose. The top thing, which is the live thing currently, is UN says Israel to allow 100 aid trucks into Gaza as the humanitarian chief of the UN warns of baby deaths. And the subtitle bit underneath is Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer tells Parliament he is horrified by the escalation from Israel in its Gaza offensive. So this is after recently in Gaza they have actually been allowing like humanitarian aid and food and stuff, like medicine and that, to go into Gaza again after a long period of not being allowed to. And so I think the UN have now made a rule which has sort of allowed for that to continue. Which, they allowed 5 lorries across the border, according to BBC News. And said Benjamin Netanyahu apparently has said the war can end tomorrow if Hamas releases its hostages and lays down arms. 58 hostages remain in Gaza, up to 23 are believed to be alive. And I'm not sure, this article doesn't say how many hostages that Israel has, because this is based off of the stuff that Israel have said. We haven't heard anything from Hamas, but we're going to move on. The next thing is a quote from Jeremy Bowen, who I think... Hang on, let me just find who Jeremy Bowen is. I think he's just the guy... he's the international editor for BBC News. So this was 7 hours ago. He said, goodwill running out as allies demand that Israel end the Gaza offensive. So this is obviously leading on from what I was saying before, of like, that they are trying to bring the conflict to an end, which nearly happened, then didn't, and then they're nearly doing it again, and then it hasn't. The next thing, so this was 37 minutes ago, ministers are considering easing winter fuel payment cuts. So this was a thing that the Labour government did in Britain around... I think it was around October, November, they were announcing that they were going to do it, or was it like mid last year? It was a thing where they were like, oh yeah, we're going to cut the winter fuel payment, which was like giving like older folks or people who apply for it like a grant to help pay their bills over the winter months so that they don't go cold. And the reason why they were doing this was that instead they were going to put more money into hospitals, so that if worse comes to shove and people ended up getting ill, then the hospitals are better fit to do them. But obviously, it drew criticism because the winter fuel payment obviously allows people to survive. And so there was the worry that they were just basically saying, oh, well, the old people can die, but at least we're putting the money into hospitals. But yeah, it looks like, according to Henry Zeffman, who's the chief political correspondent, and Joshua Nevitt, who's a political reporter, senior government figures are discussing whether to reverse the controversial decision to cut winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners within weeks. And apparently, more than 9 million pensioners lost out on payments worth up to £300 after Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, restricted eligibility for the pension top-up last year. And so, yeah, so potentially that might be coming to an end. The next few are sort of like, I was going to say small things, but they're like kind of mid things. So the next thing is Starmer says EU deal will end huge passport queues, but Badenoch criticises it as pitiful. So this is after Keir Starmer reached a deal with the EU, a sort of post-Brexit deal, which the main thing in my head that I can remember that came through with that was that EU boats can now fish in UK waters, which for a long time was like a source of conflict, especially between Britain and France, specifically, obviously, because France bordered the English Channel, and it's whether or not the boats were there. But I'm fairly sure. And the passport queues, I think, it's like passport control. Let's have a look. What does this say? The main thing that Starmer has said, and that is due to was he in Parliament today? Was on his feet for around an hour. Yes, so today he's been in Parliament, and the main thing, one of the things he said is sent a message that Britain is back on the world stage, and obviously that would be because he's done the deal with the EU alongside other recent trade deals, as it says here, with India and the US. And he also says it gives the UK an unprecedented level of access to the EU market for a country outside the bloc, and was a huge opportunity that strengthens the UK's security and borders. So this is after his, I'd probably call them controversial takes on immigration that he has been talking about over the past week or so. And Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has hit back on those claims and said the PM has failed, and the renegotiation and the deal with the EU was a total capitulation. Badenoch described the series of deals as a stitch-up to give the government easier headlines, which was selling out our sovereignty. So she has sort of criticised it, saying, like, we're giving in to their demands rather than giving our own. I think that's what that's sort of saying. So the next thing is 2 hours ago. Well, 2 hours ago, this report was written, but I think this happened a bit ago. A second man has been charged over the fires at homes linked to Keir Starmer. So last week or the week before, there was a fire. There were 3 fires near Keir Starmer's North London home that he used to live in before he moved to Downing Street. There was one at his front door, there was one on his old car, and then there was another one somewhere else, and I can't remember where that was. And I think 3 men have been arrested, and now this is the second man charged. And counter-terrorism were being looking into stuff like that. And 6 minutes ago in Oxfordshire, this her bravery shone through, says family of firefighter who died in Business Park blaze. So this was, so there were on Thursday evening, 3 firefighters were killed in a blaze at a site that they were trying to basically make stable, and it went wrong. And so the main part of this article, written by Sue Paz and Ethan Gudge, says the family of a firefighter who died in a blaze that claimed 3 lives have said her bravery and fearlessness shone through right until the end. And the family is specifically of Jenny Logan, who was 30, and the other firefighters who sadly died were Martin Sadler, who was 38, along with Dave Chester, who was 57, and this was in Bicester. The next 3 are all to do with Britain. Man who helped smuggle more than 3,000 people into Europe has been jailed for 25 years, and this was 49 minutes ago. So, is a fisherman who helped organise the movement of more than 3,000 migrants, has been jailed for 25 years. Which is a long sentence, or as I suppose it's because there's so many people, so probably the sentence is going to be longer. The next thing, so an hour ago, a supplier to major supermarkets has been hit by another cyber attack. So recently there has been some cyber attacks on Marks and Spencer's, on the Co-op, was it Heathrow Airport? There was an airport that I think had a cyber attack recently as well. And it's been affecting like online like deliveries, it's been like data being stolen, certain things like from what I know so far it hasn't been like people's bank details and stuff like that, so it's nothing major but it's still big. And apparently now logistic firm Peter Green Chilled, according to the business reporter Tom Espiner, has said it supplies supermarkets including Tesco, Sainsbury's and Aldi, but it is relatively small compared with larger UK food distributors, and it has now been held to ransom by cyber hackers. So obviously people are looking for data which they can probably sell online for money. Yeah, and I think that's what happened with the others. So we've got wife of Tory councillor has lost her appeal against a jail sentence for racist Southport Post. So this was an hour ago. So according to Martin Heath, who works on BBC News in Northamptonshire, has said that Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months in October after calling for mass deportation now and urging her followers on X to set fire to hotels housing asylum seekers. And her husband was I think still is a Conservative councillor. And yeah, so basically she hasn't been released and she's lost her appeal to not go to jail, basically. The next thing, probably quite big, 15 minutes. Zelensky accuses Russia of buying time to stall truce talks. So recently in Turkey, they were starting to have talks between Russia and Ukraine with diplomats and people going. Trump was supposed to be going, but he pulled out. But the reason why Trump pulled out especially was because Putin was meant to be going, and it was meant to be Zelensky and Putin coming face to face for the first time in 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine, and it has now turned around that Putin didn't want to go. So Trump didn't go, and so only the diplomats met up to talk. And so Zelensky, according from this article, according to Rachel Hagen, Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to buy time to continue its war in Ukraine, a day after Donald Trump said progress towards a ceasefire had been made in a call with Vladimir Putin. And it's because Russia have been setting like unrealistic conditions of like a peace deal. Yeah. The next thing is Ryanair tells flight attendants to repay salary rises. This was 51 minutes ago. So, according to Dearbale Johnson, who's a business reporter, has ordered some flight attendants in Spain to repay salary increases of up to €3,000 following a legal dispute with their union. So, from what I can gather there, so they gave them pay rises. The union wasn't happy with the pay rise, and so Ryanair have asked them to pay the money back. It's very odd. So 3 hours ago, this is a climate news thing. Coastlines in danger even if climate target met, scientists warn. So according to Mark Pointing, who is the climate reporter, the world could see hugely damaging sea level rise of several meters or more over the coming centuries, even if the ambitious target of limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius is met, scientists have warned. So this is obviously saying, despite the fact that like even if we kind of commit to like helping the environment, the coastline is still going to come to a risk because of how much damage we've already done to the world. Yeah. So because I want to go on to the Politics UK Politics thingy ones, I'm going to just read the titles of the things now. So we've got, so this is specifically about the Israel-Gaza war. So these three are at least 38 killed by Israeli strikes in Gaza in half-hour period, medics say. This was 5 hours ago. Gazan babies will die without aid, the UN humanitarian chief warns, which is what we were on about, which is what was mentioned earlier when we were on about the aid going into the thing. And UK, France and Canada threaten action against Israel over Gaza. So that's us taking a stance against what they were doing. And that was announced 9 hours ago. So these are just some news from Nottinghamshire, because that's like around where I'm sort of, I live nearby. A boy 10 among 4 arrests over a fire at a former vet. That's 2 hours ago. 8 hours ago, should Bridges' anti-terrorism barriers be removed? Is a question that's been asked. Drugs and mouldy cells at prison, says report, 7 hours ago. And Paralympians to help out with city canal cleanup, 8 hours ago. So there's just a link of most watched things. So there's the humanitarian chief quote. Lineker's tears at his colleagues' match of the day boycott. Moment prisoner governor arrested for inmate affair. A cat caught smuggling drugs into a Costa Rica prison, apparently. And Poland says it has evidence Russia was behind huge 2024 shopping centre fire, presumably in Poland. And so, also in the news, British man claims record-breaking fastest run across Australia. That was 5 hours ago. Fortnite faces complaint from Actors Union over AI Darth Vader. Of course they have. That was 2 hours ago. Family criticises law change on paedophiles' parental rights. That was 6 hours ago. Sutton Hoo bucket, believed to be cremation vessel, 8 hours ago. 7-metre tall dinosaur sculpture dividing locals in New Zealand, 5 hours ago. 7 Mexican youths shot dead at church festivity, 2 hours ago. And stolen Jim Morrison graveside bust found by chance after 37 years. That was 7 hours ago. And that's the main things off of the BBC News front page. So now we're going to go on to... So I'll go through Politics UK up until the beginning of May, and then I'll check Politics US and then Politics Global, and we'll go through like the major news. So, on May 14th, Plaid Cymru MP Liz Saville-Roberts asks Starmer if he holds any belief that would survive a week in Downing Street as she references his past support for migrants, and Starmer said, yes, the belief that she talks rubbish. And 35 minutes ago, Keir Starmer has now apologised to her, admitting that he was overly rude. 2 hours ago, there was the stuff about that Conservative supporter's wife's appeal getting shut down. 3 hours ago, Tommy Robinson is set to be released from prison within the next week after his sentence was reduced by the High Court. So this is according to Politics UK. Romanian national Stanislav Karpiuk, aged 26, has been the man charged in relation to fires which damaged properties linked to Keir Starmer. 6 hours ago, via YouGov, who do a lot of polls and stuff to do with like the current state of like Parliament and stuff. Polling reveals the Lib Dem are now ahead of the Tories in a poll. So Reform are 29% approval, +1, Labour 22, -1, Lib Dems 17%, +1, Tories 16, -2, and Green 10%, +1. A Labour MP 16 hours ago told Keir Starmer tonight to sack the speechwriter behind the Island of Strangers line in his immigration speech. Others said they felt the speech departed from Labour values. 19 hours ago, Starmer officially branded Reform as Labour's opposition during a meeting with Labour MPs tonight. The Conservatives are not our principal opponent. Reform are our main rivals for power. We have a moral responsibility to make sure Farage never wins. And apparently he's added, we have to be clear that every opportunity he has had in this parliament to back working people he's voted against. Telling the workers at Jaguar Land Rover they deserve to go bust, a state-slashing NHS privatising Putin apologist. Without a single patriotic bone in his body, we will take the fight to him, we will fight his Labour. And this is everything Keir Starmer has said during this meeting with Labour MPs. So this is the full, the joint statement from UK, France and Canada condemning Israel's wholly disproportionate escalation in Gaza. We call on Hamas to release immediately the remaining hostages, stuff about that, and then it's saying that Israel suffered a heinous attack. We've always supported Israel's rights to defend Israelis against terrorism, but this escalation is wholly disproportionate. And so they're saying they understand why the conflict started, but it's getting too far now, sort of thing. Third man has now been arrested 22 hours ago in connection to the arson attacks on his properties, Keir Starmer's properties. Kemi Badenoch says the Tories will reverse Keir Starmer's deal with the EU if they get into power in 2029. So this is according to Christopher Hope, who's a political editor. European Council President Antonio Costa accidentally says the UK and EU are not very close to finalising a deal on Gibraltar. Keir Starmer says, no, we are very close. And Costa says, oh, not very far, sorry. And important correction, Starmer jokes. So basically he's kind of said the wrong thing. And this was on May 19th, so yesterday. And then this is that press conference at the UK-EU summit where Starmer says Britain is back on the world stage. The deal is a win-win, good for both sides, and gives the UK the best access to the EU market of any non-member country. And here is the deal in full. So we have security and defence. There's a partnership concluded between UK and EU. Partnership covers cooperation on Ukraine, cyber defence industry, crisis management, and more. UK defence firms set to participate in the proposed 150 billion EU security action for Europe Fund, or the SAFE Fund, for fishing, the 12-year reciprocal fishing agreement until 30th of June 2038. No increase in EU quotas in UK water. Sanitary and phytosanitary agreement to establish a permanent SPS agreement to reduce checks and red tape on food and agricultural trade. UK food, like sausages and burgers, can be exported to the EU again. Routine checks on animal and plant products will be removed completely for some. Includes dynamic alignment of food rules, joint oversight, and a system to resolve disputes. Climate and energy to link their emission trading systems. They're preventing UK firms from paying EU carbon border tax. Cooperation on hydrogen, carbon capture and biomethane to continue. Youth Arts and Study, agreement to work towards a UK-EU youth experience scheme, like those with Australia and New Zealand, which would be capped and time limited. UK to rejoin Erasmus+, agreement to support touring artists. Trade and services, deals, judicial cooperation, health and drugs, illegal migration. With the EU's push for EU students to pay the same tuition fees as UK students does not appear in the final deal. While the UK was initially open to conceding, later signalled this would be a red line, warning it would threaten the financial stability of some universities. Which makes sense, because as somebody who's been to university recently, if they have to pay the exact same amount, you're going to have less people going to the university, meaning the university isn't going to get enough money, enough funding, and so they're going to have to cut costs and stuff, and so courses aren't going to have enough people, so they might have to shut the course. On May 18th, Gary Lineker will announce that Gary Lineker will announce on May 19th that he is quitting the BBC after 26 years after sharing a Zionism Explained post with a rat emoji. Lineker later apologised and deleted the post, saying, "I would never knowingly share anything anti-Semitic. His departure comes by mutual agreement with the BBC." On May 18th, this is a repost from Politics US, which we'll get to. Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. And that is according to Caitlin Collins, who is the chief White House correspondent and anchor of The Source at CNN. On May 18th, during Britain's Got Talent, Amanda Holden says if Keir Starmer actually wants to do something and make a difference as Prime Minister, he should compensate post office scandal victims now after a live semi-final act on ITV. The choir Hear Our Voice, which is members of the post office scandal, won that night's semi-final. James Corden, according to the London Standard, is reportedly considering a bid to become Mayor of London. I guess. May 18th, this is a repost from Politics Global, and that is that Austria had won the Eurovision Song Contest with 436 votes, with Israel coming second with 357. The United Kingdom came 19th with 88 points and no public votes. They only got jury votes. And then there's some stuff about like the questions about the EU scheme. So this is before the actual the deal was completely done. Keir Starmer is now planning to treat Reform UK as the real opposition. Keir Starmer is set to U-turn on the winter fuel allowance cuts as soon as next month. Insiders now believe the policy risks blocking news of all the government's achievements, according to Kitty Donaldson, chief political commentator at The iPaper. The EU wants the UK to cut visa fees for under 30s in exchange for help in stopping the small boats. On May 16th, the government has announced 900,000 pupils will get access to school mental health support this year as part of Labour's pledge to provide access for all by 2029. This includes one-to-one support for anxiety and group sessions to build grit for life's ups and downs. The government is also launching a new programme to support 500 schools with the poorest attendance and behaviour, led by 90 specialist hubs. The government has delayed the Chagos Islands handover to Mauritius amid fears of a toxic backlash from Labour MPs who are being asked to vote for welfare cuts. What else have we got? Ahead of the European Political Community Summit on May 16th, Keir Starmer said on the 15th that Putin must now pay the price for avoiding peace. More than 40 leaders are expected to discuss sanctions and cutting Russia's energy revenues. And so that's about halfway through May. We'll do the past 5 days, really. So we'll go on to Politics US. So this is done by the same people who do the UK politics one, I think, anyway. So 6 hours ago, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, has charged Republican or Representative LaMonica McIver with assaulting, impeding, and interfering with law enforcement after she entered into an ICE detention facility earlier this month without authorization. So that is the ICE detention facilities, that's the immigration correctional facilities and stuff that Trump has been setting up recently. 6 hours ago, Charles Kushner, a prominent real estate developer and father of Jared Kushner, has been confirmed as US ambassador to France. Kushner was previously convicted of tax evasion, witness tampering, and making false statements to the FEC. These charges were later erased by presidential pardon, according to Politico. And Jared Kushner, if I remember rightly, hang on, let me check. Jared Kushner is, I believe, the husband of Trump's daughter. So, yeah. 17 hours ago, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has proposed a bill that would ban foreign aircraft from flying under the call sign Air Force One. This comes after President Trump announced that he would fly in a Qatari-gifted Boeing 747. Obviously, a bribe. Like that's and apparently the rule is, well, this is according to Sam Steen, who works for MSNBC and Bulwark. And what was I going to say? The plane, Trump has made the deal that after he goes out of office, that the plane will become his, and it won't be the next president's plane, and it will go into the Trump's Presidential Library, or whatever it was called. Yeah. Senator Rick Scott says former President Biden's cancer diagnosis doesn't make sense. This is while he was on Fox News with Fox and Friends, which is weird because a lot of people are like sentencing certain stuff. Maryland Governor Wes Moore has vetoed a bill to advance slavery reparations for African Americans. 23 hours ago, President Trump says that the endorsements of Kamala Harris by Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, and Bruce Springsteen were illegal campaign contributions. This is according to he put out what they called a tweet? I can't remember. It's on his Truth Social account. And so he's said, according to news reports, Beyonce was paid $11 million to walk onto a stage, quickly endorse Kamala Harris, and walk off to loud booing for never having performed not even one song. Remember, the Democrats and Kamala illegally paid her millions of dollars for doing nothing other than giving Kamala a full-throated endorsement. This is an illegal election scam at the highest level. It is an illegal campaign contribution. Bruce Springsteen, Oprah, Bono, and perhaps many others have a lot of explaining to do. That is all according to Donald Trump. I'm not going to... Well, he's wrong. He is wrong. So this is May 18th, so 2 days ago at this point. So Trump responds to the news of Biden's cancer diagnosis, saying, Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. Now, even though he said this, his son, Donald Trump Jr., has come out saying he is confused as to why a doctor who is Joe Biden's wife, Jill Biden, why she didn't notice the fact that, like, the cancer symptoms, and saying that it might be a cover-up. And then we've got the announcement of the prostate cancer, which I said before. Then we've got the death toll from the severe storms in Kentucky has risen to 18. And that was, there was like some tornadoes and stuff that was happening across America. The US has, on May 16th, the US has had its credit rating downgraded by Moody's. And Moody's, I think, is a financial rating system. May 16th, the Department of Homeland Security is considering creating a reality TV show where immigrants compete for citizenship. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. And from what I can gather, the person behind the idea is one of the people who was behind the creation of Duck Dynasty. And obviously this sounds Hunger Games and dystopian, which it is. May 16th, President Trump calls on Republicans to unite behind the One Big Beautiful Bill, whatever that is. So again, on his Truth Social, he has said, Republicans must unite behind the One Big Beautiful Bill. Not only does it cut taxes for all Americans, but it will kick millions of illegal aliens off of Medicaid to protect it for those of the ones in real need. The country will suffer greatly without this legislation, with the taxes going up 65%. It will be blamed on the Democrats, but that doesn't help our voters. We don't need grandstanders in the Republican Party. Stop talking and get it done. It is time to fix the mess that Biden and the Democrats gave us. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This was again according to Trump on his Truth Social. is wrong, of course. And something which I don't get why he has the right to say this is really weird. According to his Truth Social, he said, "Has anyone noticed that since I said I hate Taylor Swift, she's no longer hot?" He's Trump. I don't know. The Secretary, again on May 16th, the Secret Service and FBI are investigating former FBI Director James Comey for an alleged threat made against President Trump. May 14th, so with this, because it skips the 15th, we'll go back to the 10th. Speaker Mike Johnson supports banning members of Congress from trading stocks, this is according to Politico, which I think sort of makes sense, because then, like, you don't really want to be manipulating the economy and whatnot. It's a bit weird. I agree with that. That makes sort of sense. Former President Biden's aides reportedly considered the idea of him using a wheelchair if he had ran and been re-elected as president in 2024. This is according to TMZ. The idea of a wheelchair was floated as a potential way to hide the 82-year-old president's continually declining mobility. And this is obviously before his cancer diagnosis had come out. That was May 13th. May 12th, New Hampshire State Representative James Spillane, a Republican, suggested punishing Republican colleagues who vote against their party leadership with flogging or by slashing their tires. He said there should be punishment from the caucus for straying too often, in my opinion, whether by revoking committee, parking spots, flogging them in the State House Square, egging their house or slashing their tires, whatever fits the crime. And May 11th, Trump announces that he will sign an executive order tomorrow to reduce drug prices. There's a very long thing that he has put on his Truth Social about that. May 11th as well, President Trump issues a statement on the talks between Russia and Ukraine, saying President Putin of Russia doesn't want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath in capitals. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. At least they will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible, and if it is not, European leaders and the US will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly. I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now. May 10th, Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, RGA, will not run for the Senate in Georgia. And I'll just see if there's anything in the global politics one that's. So there's the UK imposing sanction on Daniel Weiss for inciting and supporting violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. She will be banned from entering the UK, and her assets in the UK, if any, will be frozen. This is according to Barak Ravid, who is a global affairs correspondent for Axios. 1 hour ago, the UN has warned that 14,000 babies in Gaza could die in the next 48 hours alone. This is according to The Guardian. And then a lot of this is now some of the stuff to do with what we were on about with the BBC document. So, after quite a heavy news thing, I don't know what came into my head as to like why I should do a video on this. It's just I thought some people don't like listen to the news, and so maybe watching and listening to this would actually be beneficial for people. So, yes, thank you for listening, watching, I suppose. I might do another one in the future, like if there's been a particularly big week in the news, I might go back and do that. And, yes, thank you for watching, and ta-ra.